Admit all. Admit all. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome,
Hi.
welcome. Hello, welcome to Zenful Conversations. My name is ZenJen Brown. I'm your host, and we're here today with our guest speaker, artist, writer, workshop facilitator, and I am just skimming the top of this very talented Beverly Gordon. Beverly, welcome, and thank you so very much for joining us here today.
Thank you. And it's fun to see these faces. Some from my high school roommate is here.
Oh, well, that's so fun. I love these conversations. Honestly, I do. We'll give all the contact information at the end of our conversation today, as well as sending it tomorrow with the replay link. Yes, Beverly, thanks again for joining in. Wonderful conversation. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Zenful Conversations. We are delighted to welcome in to our virtual studio the multi-talented Beverly Gordon. Beverly is a visual artist, writer, and scholar whose work transcends traditional boundaries. She has a deep love for natural materials, found objects, and the stories they hold. Her art invites us into a world where texture, memory, and spirit intertwine, offering a sense of both wonder and grounding. Beyond her visual art, Beverly has also written extensively with several books about material culture and the deeper meanings behind everyday objects.
Really
She
nice intro.
sees, she sees the world through a lens of reverence, bringing forth beauty in ways that asks us to slow down, excuse me, to notice and to connect. And Beverly, your work feels like a conversation between time, nature, and the unseen. There's a soulfulness in how you bring objects and textures together, which is what intrigues me. Your art reminds me that beauty is found in not just in what we see, but in what we feel, in the story's essence, the presence of things. So I'm looking forward to this conversation and hearing a little bit more about your journey. So I guess my first question would be, how did you first discover your artistic voice?
Oh, I guess it discovered me. I don't know. That question comes and I never know how to answer it because I remember even in seventh grade, I just being so happy in I had an art class that just brought something out of me. So I just remember the feelings of it. But it wasn't it wasn't a smooth, easy journey. I didn't go to art school. I mean, it wasn't that kind of thing, but it was always kind of calling. And when I was a kid or a teenager, let's say, I know I had someone say, "Well, what's the star you want to hitch your wagon to?" Kind of like, "What's your dream?" And it was writing. So it wasn't visual art, but they weave in and out of each other, I think.
Has your art always looked the way it does now, or has it evolved in surprising ways?
I think that a lot of what I do, when I look back, whether it's at things that I made or things that I wrote, there's a really consistent voice. You learn different things over time, but it was always there.
There
So,
is a video, a very lovely video that I will be sending out tomorrow with the replay link about your art. And I've watched it several times. I find it very interesting. And even how it turns out that you don't intentionally make things small, but they seem to be sometimes smaller, those little dolls that you were talking about.
well,
Uh,
some of what I do, it depends on, I work with natural materials, and the materials I use are often small, and so it's an intimate scale by nature. and what I'm going to talk about shortly, in terms of some of the collage, why it started small too. So it'll, yeah, it's intimate.
Right. And see, I didn't even mention that you do soul collage and there's so many other things you do, but this is, we could be here for a very long time if we talked about everything you offer. Do you want me to continue to ask it a couple questions, or did you like to say anything, or any?
Why don't we see what else you've got? Because I'm curious what your questions are. So why don't we do what I'm
Well, I just when you approach creating a piece, I'm just wondering, does it come from intuition or structure or something else? You know, I'm curious about how does it start?
Well, that's part of what I'm going to talk about, but it's intuitive. And I actually am teaching some intuitive collage classes, which I've named that intuitive collage, and they seem to hit. They get people. They resonate with people. I have learned, and part of this I'll show you in the presentation about that. Some of it comes from the soul collage training that I have, um, to just let materials and images kind of call me and come together as they want to come together. And that is the language to use. That how do they want to be? How do they fit together? How does that feel like it's right? And I don't usually know exactly what I want to do. I mean, that there is an interplay, of course, but I the image, things will start with an image. And um, so it evolves. And then what I'm going to talk about today is how the 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 true meaning of it can reveal itself afterwards. Sometimes during the process, but also afterwards. So I will address that. I did want to say
Uh,
that I'm going to be talking, since that was the invitation, about visual work and how messages come through. But it really is very much the same through writing process. And I have a group. There's one of the people in it here from that group that's been meeting since the pandemic began, doing a process that we call deep soul writing, which was actually based on something that Janet Connor wrote. But it's where we essentially, it's almost like an automatic writing, but it's to get guidance and to allow what comes through. And I also do another kind of writing, which is just more free form writing from prompts of different sorts. And the the there's bunches of people coming. It's great. The processes of allowing things to come and allowing them to fit together is really very similar. And I didn't think we could talk about both writing and the visual work today, but if it comes up in the questions, we certainly can or will, I think.
you can use this time however you desire. Um, are these virtual classes?
Well, they are mostly for the writing, yeah, and I'm in groups with people where they're not really classes, or just groups that meet, although I met you, Jen, through a
Yes,
a
yes,
writing class. So
yes.
I do some of it virtually. And that hasn't, I haven't done as much of that as I did in the past, because I'm doing more, I do collage classes of various sorts. But maybe this would be a good time for me to go into the images. The reason I'm doing it as a presentation is you have to see what I'm talking about. So it's
Right.
it's a slideshow essentially.
Go
And
ahead. Go ahead, my dear. Have at it.
okay, well, let me
I'm going to
share.
put myself on mute and hopefully I'll remember to take myself off.
Let me share my screen and get the. Okay, can you all see? Yes. Okay. So all right. So just to put this in some perspective, the messages come through writing from the inside is a name that I started calling writing classes that I was giving, meaning that we get our we try not to use our left brains and allow what wants to come through to come through. So it's a kind of free writing, and soul writing is where you're actually addressing what can be a guidance from whatever you call it, your guidance team is and that's I won't go into that at great length, but just want to say if any of you want to know more about that, I can certainly share more. And you'll see that this is consistent. It's my whole goal, I think, is to find out what wants to be known, find out what wants to come through. And so I'll just move into the visual art, which, as you say, it's intuitive. So the way I put this together was to sort of tell a little bit about a particular, well, you'll see. I don't need to tell you what it is. So soul collage is a process that was developed by a woman named Sina Frost, who first developed it in the context of a workshop with Jean Houston. So it was always about sort of psycho-spiritual things, and it is using collage in this intuitive way. You could make a deck. So what you're seeing in these images of people at workshops that I've done is you can see the small scale of what they're working on, and you can see how intent everybody is on it. So Sina developed this process, which you make a deck of personal cards, and they had in the soul collage world, and I am a facilitator, it was really for personal development, I would say, for getting your inner voices, some spiritual guidance from it, but what community are you part of, that kind of thing. And I became a facilitator, I think it was 2011, maybe 2012. I started doing it anyway in 2011. And so, I have a lot of years with that, and I love doing that because it's so rich when you share it with people. But what I want to share, let me, one moment. So when you make these cards intuitively, you then have a process of letting them talk to you. And the quick way of saying it, you let the card talk in its voice as its own being, so to speak, and it will tell you who it is and what it wants you to know. And that was something I had been doing collage before that. And once I found that, it was like I started soaring with it. So people had done that. I was well steeped in how natural that felt to me. But then, so what I want to share is I started realizing that's the images that I made over time were not just about me, or were not just for my personal self, let's put it that way, because there were messages that came through on some of the cards. I thought, I don't know why I'm making that, that's not, doesn't seem to be about me. So I'm going to go through a series that came through, I think it was from about 2012 to 2018, something like that, that were really, I thought, why am I getting all these messages about patriarchy? I wasn't feeling particularly needing to know about patriarchy, or it wasn't an issue for me. I mean, I'd been through my consciousness raising in the 70s and all that, but I was just surprised about that. So I'm going to go through it because it was only in hindsight, after a number of years, when I looked back at my cards, that I realized there is an evolution here of what the messages are, and they're for the collective consciousness. They're not just about me at all. They're about something that's coming through. And the series that I'm going to share it seems ironic now, because it was really about the coming of the bleeding into the consciousness of the divine feminine. And right now we're at a moment where that doesn't look very strong, but I still believe that this is kind of like the foretelling, it's in the field before it's downloaded by everybody. And so this was in advance, let's put it, simply put it that way. So there's a lot of words on here, but you don't have to follow them all. It's just, this was to help me remember. So this was one of the very early ones that I made. And I made this card just from these images that we would pick out and have them come together. And she called herself the woman who must watch. And it just seemed like, well, you can see her actual statement. I am a witness without hands to fashion and create. Without a strong voice, I must watch in silence. My heart is alive, but it remains contained. I stand quiet and witness as the vast sea. And I felt like that was the kind of woman, the housewife of the 1950s, which was the ideal that I grew up with. And pretty much around the same time was this image, which I actually just love as an image, but it was like disturbing too. It's the central figure is like holding the apple, like Eve, but she's a kid perhaps, and she's stiff. She's folk sculpture, and she's holding the Bible. If you may not be able to see that very well, and I just need to get this out of the way so you can see it. So she said, "I'm one who carries the old woman's place. I was taught from a young age to keep silent, fear the temptress. I live in the world of fiber forms, the encoded memory of being kept in line." And I was a fiber artist, and so I know how that was always not really given a lot of credence in the art world. So that devaluing of women. Okay, so the same day I made that was this one came through. You can make several cards at once. And this was a pretty scary one that was the authoritative judge who was screaming and was in this icy world and judgment. And so that was an icy planet, kind of, and a disturbing one. So some of these cards can actually create emotional responses because they hold that energy. So this authoritative judge was pretty powerful in that way. And then again, this is over the course of a couple of years. So it wasn't the only cards I made, but when I look back, they've made a progression. So this grandfather, with all of the women in, silenced, and I felt like he was reminding me of my own grandfather. And they were sunlit, they were in the light. That's just kind of the way we read it, just looking at all those clues. But he was very tired. And he did have his staff on something with a different kind of color. And I felt that he was not really wanting to keep going with this anymore, that he was really tired, but he was at the edge. He was just touching into something that it wasn't ready to get yet. This is 2012, and there were intimations of male and female coming together. So this is an image from, well, the background is like an Oreo cookie, but the front of it was from a sculpture by Nek Chand, who worked in India in the area in the partition of India and Pakistan. It was very meaningful sculpture to me, and I felt like this was changing a little bit because this was a woman, the sculpture, but it was very masculine looking and interested in creating a world of peace in an ugly place. So um, all the words don't matter, but you can see that it was holding out a gift. And when I made this, it's just, oh, well, this feels like there's something in the figure's hands, and what would it be? And it was that orange glowing kind of thing. So it felt like Nick Chand was giving this beacon, an offering that was relating to this male-female thing. And then there were some other ones which really surprised me. So here was this Renaissance figure that was like a hermaphrodite is what it felt like, that a very masculine looking character, but dressed as a woman. And then the boys were holding the apple, if you could see that on the side. And it seemed like something is changing. There is something changing in this paradigm. And again, this was a long time ago already, but I was feeling it. And these cards, again, they weren't about me or my life in any personal way. And there was some more of the Renaissance ones. And the Renaissance, they say was the rebirth of all this stuff, but it was very masculine, logical. So this was kind of coming out of a chrysalis, which we hear a lot about these days, but emerging into form. And it was masculine, but coming from a birthing place, the female birthing place, and that form behind the figures feel very female to me. And they seemed to be lit up from inside, that glowing feeling. So something's being born as I was reading these, or as they were telling me about them. And then there was one where there was another kind of grandfather who was holding a baby. So the male had become much more nurturing and supporting the child, and there was reverence, and it was an easy looking character, unlike some of these ones that we've had before. And he said, you hold the future and can support it, and we're all evolving. So it was a really much more positive image that had come through. In 2015, I was still getting some of these Renaissance figures, and looking to the left, look, which way are we looking, right side or left side, the masculine or the feminine. But I won't tell you all the details, but you can kind of see that these start telling me the stories. And then I think I didn't write the years on here, but I think this was about 2016 or 17. And this one was called Herald the New Era. It was something was changing. So shofars are the ram's horns that are used at the beginning of the Jewish New Year. And so they were being ready to take up to say, here it is, there's something new coming in. And we're really getting into this 21st century consciousness. And there was this naked woman, but she wasn't looking as awful as the ones in the previous ones. And the men were still held inside this other man, which I thought was very interesting. They were huddling together almost for protection. So, but the woman was going, as I felt, into that new era. And I have like one or two more. So this is The Burden of Man. It was 2015. And it was the men were feeling their burden, the white man's burden, actually carrying rocks uphill. And the woman's face was hidden, but something was coming out of that, So just moving, they feel like they're in a progression. So if you could follow how I'm making the progression. And then more was coming through about even men wanting to get out of that paradigm, and looking for a way through, and looking for calm, and trying to find the love and the transcendent. And the book was almost blank, so just had few traces of the old. So it was time to get a new story. And then there was an emerging paradigm one where the pink came after the pussy hats who were coming back around again, but protesting the first Trump inauguration. So it was the old reality, but it was new stuff coming through. And maybe you could see how it works. That pink cord is like a phone cord. So it's about communication, and things are being pinked. Anyway, so that's, and the last one in this whole long series was 2018, and it was about the pain of men. And another marker on the way for men, it's now beginning to be seen. And the men are saying, watch, we can emerge to an alternate universe. Send us love. We want to emerge, and we know it's a heavy burden for us too. So again, there's lots of details in all of these, but maybe you get the sense of how they were giving me messages about this whole process. And there were other series that I found that were also about changing paradigms, not so much the patriarchy. And I don't want to overwhelm you with too many words and things, but just that letting those images say, what are they about? You know, obviously when I made this card, I found a lot of images of men. And that's what I was drawn to doing that day, was just picking those, and they wanted to come to me. So how they came together and what they had to say was definitely not known in advance. So here's some,
Do you think this would be a good time to check in just to make sure that everybody is
sure,
with
if
you?
there are
Does
questions.
anybody have any questions to clarify anything to understand? Because it's pretty deep. Some of this, I mean, your work is very deep. Does anybody have any questions or comments at this time? Go ahead, Katharina.
Hi, you saw that I unmuted. Um, One thing that I love that L that is on that figure. He seems to be in a he seems maybe to be in a Muslim temple.
Yes,
And
or
it's almost like an illuminated manuscript. The whole Renaissance feeling comes through there too, even though it feels like it's kind of combining various um, various cultures in a very, I mean, I think part of the thing that I really felt is the strength of the coloring in that very specific letter, and then the gentleness of the space that he's actually in are really amazing. One of the things that's hitting me is that I guess I'm very much affected, and I think many of us are, by what's going on in the material world right now, and especially in the country that we live in right now. And so, even though a lot of your images are very classical and perhaps very antique, it feels like there's a youth that comes through them. The the meanings behind them are very young. The whole transitional gender changes are something that's maybe it's been working itself out for 100 years in this country, but really right now it's the youth that has that particular, that emerging, and that changing is really in the hands of youth. So it's kind of the question that I had at the beginning before you actually started speaking was, how do you join things? How do things become, what are the commonalities that your art has? And this whole series has actually answered that question for me, because it's organic. It grows from one to the other. It's pulsing its way through to something that obviously hasn't completely emerged yet. Anyway, those are the feelings that I'm getting.
wow. Well,
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I mean, you've clearly got this idea of how you read them essentially, and you might not read it exactly as I do, but you get it's because it's not really left brain. It's not really the words are just a way of shaping it. But let me show you some other things, and we can certainly come back to some of this. But I'm just going to go to I don't have I just brought other images of other kinds of. Um, Not soul collage cards. The soul collage cards, by the way, are 5 by 8 inches by definition. And so that, which is a really nice size. It's the golden mean, the ratio of nature. But other things that I do are somewhat different sizes, but also still not huge. And again, looking at the kind of work that I've done over many years. And I really started to do this pretty seriously about 2012, when I had more time to do it. And I spend time in the studio now. And I didn't make these at the same time either. These are over a period of years. And when I look back, I say, oh my God, that's just like that other one, that the themes assert themselves. They want to be there. The colors may change, they may have different materials, but they keep coming through. So I'm just giving a couple of other examples. So these are collages, some of which have things embedded in them, like the one on the right, and the one in the middle. And often I end up having these backgrounds that feel like space or some other dimension. And often these little bubbles show up too, or little pieces like that. So it's dreamy, but in a sense of this is what to me is a real spiritual domain. And of course, the upraised hand we could have different meanings for, but it's that all-seeing eye. It's the reaching for something transcendent. So you get a sense of that. And I have a lot of things with reaching. And so these were some other 2N, some 3D more. Well, these are all have some 3D in them. And you can see Jen referred to my using natural materials. So for example, the piece on the left has deer hooves and dew claws and parts of the palm trees that are in my yard. And the piece on the right has things from mangroves and mermaids' purses, which are from the sea. So they work their way in, and they show up how they want to fit together. But there's a lot of this reaching. Okay. Am I stuck? No. More reaching. And so just paper collage on the right, or more three-dimensional. And so I have all these nature adventures with these materials. So what you're looking at on the left, these are fish bones. Those of us in Florida have had to deal with red tide sometimes, which is horrible. But on the other hand, there are things left on the beaches that become my materials. And so these are fish bones and some other materials, but get the idea. I've also had, and these are 2 examples, but there are more. And again, over a period of time of things that are kind of juggling. This one on the right, I've actually called juggling timelines, but just this feeling that we are juggling things. We have a lot of balls in the air, so to speak, and those are made out of elk hide. But it's the things are swirling around us. And so I get some messages, sometimes specific ones from an individual piece, but often just this overarching world that's it's illustrating for me what is happening in not just my consciousness, but what I'm attuned to in the collective. And these are also about timelines. And if I won't even define timelines, that's a whole other subject, but just that things are in transition and moving, and we are in this sort of soup of consciousness. And I think the last series I picked out, I also, over many years, I keep making boats of different sorts. So 3D and 2D. So these are, again, materials that I found here. So the boats themselves in these are from the palm trees, and then other materials, including on the left, those are oak galls from my oak trees. And so these are 3-dimensional, and more bones, fish bones. So I do a lot of processing of bones. So, and many of my boats have multiple passengers. So you can see, and I started doing, I did an exhibit in 2012 in Wisconsin, and I had the boat people. That was the first ones I think I made. So they're still happening. So this is what I mean by many people. People in an abstracted way, but beings for sure. So some of them can be a little humorous, but they're made with the materials that call me. And then there was a series, these look very crowded on the screen, but long boats, they're like maybe a yard long altogether. And so these were cardboard cutouts, so they're hard to get good photos of, but you can see a couple of close-ups. So who's on the boats? It's people from all times. Or birds from all sorts. Again, looking in hindsight, it's like we're all in this boat together, or we're on this journey. The boats are crossing over. We're going from one place to another. I think that's the theme that I'm tuned into. Well, I know it's the theme that I'm tuned into, and I'm impatient for it to go faster, but it is what it is, certainly. So some more boats. Again, I don't necessarily plan it, but I start seeing them that way, and then they become that. The one on the right, I'm still working on. It's not quite finished. And the one on the left, it was called the rescue boat, which is, I think, the only one that doesn't have any people, but interesting. Well, that one is less the boats, but to me, they're on the water. They could be in the clouds, but just let's cross over. Okay, and then I make a lot of sort of what sometimes are totemic figures, or I always loved masks and ethnic art from around the world, and it's very steeped in that. So some of these are just figures that are sort of seers, or they are witnesses, or they are guardians, or you can call them different things, but they're connected with the natural world. And so these are collages that have things on them, in them, with them. And then I have a series of these figures that many people call dolls. I don't like to call them dolls, but I don't mind if people do. I mean, it's just, we don't have a good word for them, spirit figures. But a lot of them are very self-contained. And this piece on the left, it's relatively new, but it's embracing the mystic self, just holding, like being self-contained, holding space, that kind of thing. So here's some more.
I recognize that one picture. You used it in the class I took.
Oh, right.
The little keeping.
Right. So we use that as a writing prompt, is what you say.
Yeah, was wonderful too.
So I'll stop the share, but if you want me to go back to anything, I certainly could. But to give you
wow.
how that, and I have many, many images, but I was trying to pick some that came through in themes, or that, and then how they manifest in different ways, but all connected for sure.
That is a lot to take in. I will say what so much work went into that presentation. I appreciate you doing that for us, because that took a lot to put that together. But that is a lot to take in, and I do want to give people a chance to catch up. So take a breath.
Take a bunch of breaths.
Take a couple breaths, maybe have a sip of water or something. But I would like a couple questions, because I am certain people have them, and don't feel odd about asking questions or anything like that. All questions are valid, and I know there's got to be some. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask about anything at all, anything from Beverly and her process, or any of the art, or clarification on anything? Wide open. Any questions from anybody? Go ahead, Stephanie. You're on mute. So you're still on mute. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so when I saw the empty boat, I thought it was left behind for all those that weren't carried away on the first boats. So as we ascend, as we transfer over, as we move along, there's going to be people left behind, and that boat was there for them. That's what I saw. I thought it was great.
Well, and I love this because when an artist makes something and puts it into the world, it's not necessarily only what they think. I had this I'll tell this briefly because it made such an impression on me. When I was in college, I was in a class, literature class, where we read a story by Isaac Bashevis, the singer, and it was a group of maybe 20 students, and we had great conversations about this story. I don't remember which story it was, but we all kind of agreed what it was about. And then he came to our class to talk. And he said, "Oh, no, 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 you're all wrong." It was he had a whole different thing. And I realized, well, there were a whole lot of us, and it meant something very different to us. So to realize that when you put something out, it has its own life, and
Right.
it may, so I love your being able to see it that way. And I did call that one the rescue boat. So
That's how I saw it. Yeah.
And that's something. And Stephanie, hi.
Hi,
Stephanie and I,
Jen.
we are yoga sisters. Our initial yoga teacher training.
Yes.
We were yoga sisters. Yeah, so good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you know both of us.
I know Beverly too. Yeah.
So that's very, very small world kind of thing. So just thanks for coming. I wanted to say hey.
Hey. Hey, Beverly.
Boy, have we changed since that training, hey?
Yes, yes.
Both of our lives. Holy smokes.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. Questions, anybody? Thank you, Stephanie.
You're
Any
welcome.
questions from anybody else?
I don't want to take up too much time, but since I already did that whole thing. But I wonder whether you consciously were using the trope of the arc, because there is, in some of them, there's a feeling of safety, of actually going through heavy seas and having everybody very fully enclosed. And then you have that one where you said it's not a boat, but they're on the water. And it was freeing. It was just, it had such a freeing feeling to it. But definitely that feeling of, we are all in one boat. But I found it interesting. Maybe the arc came to me because I saw that you were grouping animals, you were grouping people. They weren't the passengers in the boats weren't all that diverse. Let's say, they were, huh?
in different ways, they're different though.
Right.
Yeah.
No.
But that's an interesting question. And no, it wasn't conscious about the arc. I mean, surely these things are in our, it's in the culture we grew up in. But no, I never really thought of it as the kind of thing of safe passage as much as the crossing. You're in one bank and you're going to go to the other bank, and it's to get from here to there. But I'm sure it's in there. So we were just saying it that other people will feel it in different ways.
Right.
And if it has a power, that's fabulous. That's if it speaks that way. Then
I especially like the one that seems to have almost the northern lights behind it. That one is amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Good. Thank
Some
you.
are very simple. They don't have a lot of parts, but they work.
Thank you, Katharina. Appreciate that. Anybody else? So then my question to you, Beverly, is do you want to continue or talk a little bit, or do you want more questions from me?
I'm open for any way that this unfolds. I mean,
But
there's so
definitely
many.
want you to say what you want, what you would like
No, I think
said.
questions from you or others or
I
other.
could, well, I heard that one, I
This was-
believe it was Susan. Susan, I think it was, said that you are a Reiki energy practitioner healer. So I'm a master myself. How does your Reiki practice influence your art, though, or does it? Do you feel that your energy, work, and creativity are interconnected?
Everything is interconnected, and I I am a certified Reiki, and I am a hospice. I'm an end of life doula, and I do know Susan from that too. But it's not, and I when I do energy healing, it's not just Reiki. I mean, it's all of a piece.
It's all one, right?
And so the work that I'm doing, the kind of art that I'm doing is all about energy, really, or about that collective sort of mystical experience. It's hard to find the words sometimes. And so they're all interpenetrating. I can't say that touches it, but they all touch each other.
Right, yeah, and that's a lot of times people say to me, "Well, were you using Reiki when I was doing a guided meditation or something like that?" I'm like, "Well, it's really all one. It's in my words, it's in my presence." So yeah, I get it. When you're creating, so I guess this kind of you just answered that. As the next one was, when you're creating, do you intentionally channel healing energy into your work, or does it happen naturally?
If there's healing energy, it's happening. When I remember, and it's not all the time, but when I remember, I do like to just set an intention. But if I know I have a few hours to really work on things, I will set the intention that the spirit be there. But I don't always remember. That's pretty inconsistent, actually. But I think it's the overarching intention. That's what and it has to come. It's like there's something in me that just wants to keep doing it. And this stuff is hard. It's like I can't really get shows, or it's not in the art. I just been in a lot of art fairs of late, and there's a million pictures of paintings or whatever's photographs of sea turtles, because we live here, or pelicans. It's just not in that realm, and it's not about the art dialogue. I was an academic. I know all the language about that, but it's not about any of that. So it's hard to find its audience in a way, but you're getting it. The people who are talking are getting it clearly. And to any ideas you have about ways to get it shared, because I want to share it. I think that making things, I know this is true in writing, that even sometimes when you channel something in writing, it just comes through. And it's because it's in the field. It's just like Da Vinci got it and the inventors get it and all that stuff. It's in the field. And so even before we write it down, it's there. And maybe writing it down is enough, and it doesn't even have to get shared as much. I'm of many minds about that, but it is it's part of our, I'm trying to find the words, this enterprise of being human at this point in time, which is a rather remarkable and difficult and amazing time too, with the kind of global awareness, global problems, all of this. As I said, I picked those things about masculine and feminine, and it just seems so ironic now because we're at such a huge backlash.
It's gonna come around, baby.
Yeah,
Keep
I
your
think so.
fingers crossed. It's gonna come
Yeah, but I mean,
around.
it's just so much in our face. But I do think that these things are not synchronous. So when I had those things starting in, more than 10 years ago, it was just, it's coming, and they've been talking about the Aquarian age of coming since the 60s. So here we are.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I'm like, I'm a little impatient with the whole process myself here. Yeah, so then you see art as a spiritual practice.
Absolutely. For me, and that's not that way for everybody. And I love color and form and design, and so I do some like some classes where that people don't necessarily want to do that, but it infuses me for what I'm interested in. And I'm
Right.
certainly
I do think
grateful.
sharing is important, an important part of the process. Personally, that's my thoughts on it.
Well,
Only
sometimes,
because over the past few years, I've been dealing with a few different things myself. And if I didn't share it, I don't think I would understand it to the depth that I do either. So I just think it's part of it. I think everything needs to be shared. But I also think that is in that field. I love that talk about that field. Has there been a moment that you can recall when your art revealed something to you that, wait a second, has there been a moment when your art revealed something to you that words could not? Yeah.
well, yes, but then I can't necessarily express it in words. I mean, the feeling, you know, it's working with more than our linear brain, sure. So yes, it can make manifest something that may not have an actual word. I mean, like those pictures I showed of all those hands. I don't have a specific thing to say about that, but it reveals something, you know, that is
Right.
sense.
Well, all of this conversation is almost, there's not words for any of it. Even, some of the other conversations I've had with some of the, it's just almost even, I'm not sure we could quite comprehend it. It's right on the teeter-totter of, oh boy, I think I get it, but I don't know how to explain it.
Although that's
Um,
ironic for a writer, and I am a writer too. So, you know, that I often think about that, you know, but we're learning other languages, and I think it's another language that, you know, it's a different kind of language. So it's one of my languages.
Very nice.
With words
Very
too.
nice. Um,
So I know
what
that
do
there are people on this call who are writers besides, you know, me, and you know, it would anybody else who has, it doesn't have to be a question, just if there's anything you want
you
to just.
anybody want to share anything? Comments, thoughts?
You know,
Susan.
when Beverly mentioned just a few minutes ago, the slide with the three hands, one of them, when I looked at it, I said, oh, Reiki, because it had all this emanation in the center of the hand was kind of like the universe. And I went, ah, there it is.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah, that too. Again, it's just like what happened with Katharina. You see something else, and it's wonderful. Yeah.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Helene. I hope I said your name correctly. You're on mute, my dear. Thank you.
I'll just, I've known Beverly since about 1972. A long history of connecting and art and creativity and writing. And I think that there's something very, I find it very fascinating about the way of working like on a soul collage, where you are working, or a collage or any piece of artwork where you yourself as the artist creator are somehow connecting to an expression of something of your soul. And then I'm speaking right now of being part of Beverly's group on deep soul writing. And when we write, we're very much writing on an individual, receiving information, expression of whatever that is, having our own thumbprint And then with the writing, the additional part, which in a way is what's happening here tonight with the questions and the discussion, is that there's a verbalization of or sometimes it's a speaking with the writing, it's a speaking out loud of what it is we have written, which then adds another dimension to what we're sharing that makes it known. And because there are multiple people who are writing at the same time on the same unknown question sometimes, or a specific prompt, it is always so fascinating to see what expression or what contribution comes forth that elevates, impacts, raises inquiry, causes stopping to take a deep breath and look again. And it's a incredible, I think it's an incredible gift that anytime someone sits down to express their creative soul in some way and then come together and share, it expands the field so much.
Thank
So
you for that. That is beautiful.
I thank Beverly a whole lot for the myriad times we've been together in different ways of doing this, and then to see the work on the screen, because I don't get to see it very often, and to see some of the pieces we've written about, for example, in conjunction with other pieces that often raise another aspect or question about something we may have written about, or something we get to look at anew.
One of the things that I realize I am trying to keep all my records and group images together, that like kind of like I showed you some groupings, because I think in the long run, and some of these things are a little ephemeral and won't last forever because of the organic materials, but I think in the long run they're going to be books, maybe not physical books, I'm not sure, but you know, that because they're collections too, and so that the whole thing of their coming together, you know, with their companions, it's part of what I think will happen. So sometimes I think, oh well, maybe it'll all be posthumous, but I'm not saying I have to wait for that, but I just you know, there's a lot to take care of to publish things or whatever. So
That was very beautiful, Helene. And you know, it reminds me that like when the writing class I took with you, Beverly, BB, good friends get to call you BB. When you speak what you write, it changes the whole energy of it. And that's when you said that, Helene, it reminded me, because at first I was, you know, too vulnerable, you know, I don't say it. And but you when you do, whew, changes everything. So that just is it's all very, very interesting. Very interesting. Definitely gonna linger and think about this for hours or even days after this conversation. Anybody else?
but add one thing to that, Jen. When you speak, first of all, when you speak it, you hear yourself, but also others hear you, and the being witnessed is a very strong part of the experience. And we need to be even creating even more places where that's almost ritualized into things, because it's very important.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love speaking. I love it. Somebody else speak here. Let's hear some voices. Who else has something they'd like to ask or say?
I was just going to add that basically, I guess there are a lot of images floating around. One of them is just Akashic threads that get woven into a tapestry. And that as we communicate with each other, instead of it just being one stream, we're actually creating a tapestry that maybe it's temporary, it's just like, the entire universe is sort of a movable picture puzzle, I mean, that's basically what it is. But as we create these tapestries, what more beautiful way to actually go forward into the future than to have these pieces of beauty that are created by, a real, I guess, a mind that is in sync with the beauty of creation that we live in, the gift of the universe that we live in, and to be among people who can make this instead of, I won't even go there, but some of the things that are being created nowadays, and that this is a sharing and a growing at the same time, and growth is eternal. Growth never ends for any of us, and I can see that a few of us are, not everybody here, but a few of us are kind of in our evening of life, and somebody just reminded me yesterday that, the even the evening that we never stop going, and I was just, there is yet another sunset. There is the whippoorwill that sings all night. Even when that is what we are observing, it's just as beautiful as the springtime or the early morning hours. So anyway, I thank you. This has been amazing, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to share it. Beverly, is this going to be able to be shared?
Yes, this will be, the replay will be sent to everybody tomorrow. It'll be up on YouTube and podcast.
Okay,
And
fantastic.
podcast.
I have a
Thank
few
you.
people who would love to see this.
Thank you
And
so much.
and if they do, yeah, and wow, what a poet you are, my dear. I mean, some of you didn't hear, but I knew Catherine when we were 16, so it's pretty amazing, and we haven't always been in touch, so this is really special. And you are such a poet. It's beautiful. I what I forgot the other thing I was just about to say. Yes, you certainly can share it, and I really invite people, if you share it with people, I would love feedback, because the more I get, the more, well, just hearing your comments today gives me a whole other perspectives on things, that it's very meaningful. And maybe with networking, I'll find the right channels for getting some of this out. Oh, and I think this is actually a time to say it. I think Jen had put it in some of her materials, but I have written a book which is not published yet, because I'm kind of waiting to figure out the publication part, but it's on writing from multisensory prompts. And it started out being writing from visual prompts, because I'm a visual person. My career was dealing with visual images all the time, and I was writing. So these things came together, but then I realized it wasn't even just visual prompts. It would be, it could be sound, it could be smell, it could be taste, that all kinds of using different senses. And I have a great manuscript for it, but I've been sort of stuck on, and it's got lots of images, so it's not just a text thing that you do on Amazon easily. So I'm on a network too, because maybe I will meet just the right person who will help me get it done right. I've had different publishing experiences, so I know all the pitfalls. And so that's one thing. And I also have, and so there is a manuscript there already, and it's very rich. I'm really excited about it. And I have also started collecting what it could be titles or writing titles of artworks or poems, or and I started with 1001, and then I had more and more. So I have 3 volumes of 1001 titles or prompts that are kind of spiritually inspired, or to hope to be inspiring. So, stay tuned for that too. That I think I can publish myself without too much trouble.
That's
But
great. I was going to ask what the future, what's your your excitement at this time. So that's
part.
awesome. I do want to ask you two more quick questions before we complete the conversation here. What do you hope people feel when they engage with your work?
I hope it I don't know, what stimulates, wakens, something like that in somebody else. If there is a feeling or a response that's more than that's a pretty picture, or or not an intellectual analysis, that's but what it is, it would vary. But since to me, it's holding, most of this is some of it. I do some things that are just sort of maybe a little humorous, but most of it's holding this deep well of energy and so I want people to feel that at best.
Nice, beautiful. One of the ladies, Kim, said, "I have to go. This was wonderful. I'm speechless." And that's what I've noticed sometimes when people are quiet, they're processing, it's, if you could offer a piece of wisdom to those who feel creatively blocked, what would it be?
Well, just start writing, just start free writing, just let it pour out on the page, start mark making with colors. You don't have to make anything that does anything. It just moves the energy. It's all about moving energy. And there are all sorts of books and people doing the, many online courses on all of this, but that's essentially the thing, is just play. Just let it, without having it to be good or anything in particular.
Right. Any final thoughts? Any final thoughts or anything you want to leave everybody with before we give your contact information out?
Thank you for coming. That's really nice. And I know there were a number of people who said that they couldn't come at this time and they want to watch the replay. So yeah, share it if there's anyone you want to share it with. I will say,
Go ahead.
I will say one thing. Because I've written a lot of books over my life, most of which were more academic, and so they had sort of narrower audiences, and not all of them, but and a lot of articles, and people would come to me or connect with me somehow in email, or come up to me somewhere that they met me 20 years after I wrote something. And, well, they'd come up and they say, "Oh, your book meant so much to me," and I had to say which book, because I didn't know. What are you talking about? And I realized that that's just a tiny fragment of people who might have been affected that happened to tell me that you don't know what happens when you put something out there. You don't know how many people might have something that deeply affects them from it. It's just out there. And really understanding that, you do it because there's something in you wants to do it, not for any gain or for anything that comes, or at least not for me. I mean, there are people who that's what they care about, but the sense of it goes out there and it's a gift. So if you have something to give, that's wonderful. It's a gift. And you don't know those tapestry threads you talked about. You don't know where it goes.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Let's see here. Yeah. Beverly has several books on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, search Beverly Gordon, and they all come up.
They're not all available anymore, but
Oh, they do come up though. There you go. Website, BeverlyGordon.info, BeverlyGordon.info. Lots of stuff on there, workshops, the video about her artwork is on that website, and more. That's BeverlyGordon.info.
it's
You can
very,
connect with her via email at bgordon@wisc.edu. bgordon@wisc.edu. Tomorrow I will send phone number, etc., a little bit more information in the email tomorrow, along with the video and the replay link for this. Please visit zenfulconversations.com. We have lots of conversations and lots of all different interesting offerings, because I just think it's so great to have these conversations. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Yeah, Beverly, in true peace and presence, I thank you so much. The presentation was quite lovely. I know what kind of work that takes, and I just think it was nice that you did that. Everyone, thank you for coming. Thanks for your support of these conversations. Thanks for showing up for all of us, right? As a collective. Thanks for showing up. And yeah, thanks for your great questions, and see you next time. In deep gratitude. Namaste. Namaste. Bye, everyone.